After having prepared both the system and the patient, we are ready to start with the data capture. First of all, it's mandatory to insert a new patient folder into the Smart Clinic database. To do that, you can use the first button named New Patient of the toolbar. Fill in all the mandatory fields that are the name, the surname, the birthday, and the gender, and confirm by the button Add Patient. Then you have to create a new session folder that will contain all the recorded data. To do that, click on the button named New Session and fill in the name that you prefer. We suggest to use a name that can help you to remember the reason for which you have performed the gait analysis. Now, you have to select the patient pathology. You can choose one of the already available fields in the list, or you can create a new one by clicking on the pencil icon. Fill in the name of the new pathology, for example, normal, and click on the blue vertical arrow to add it in the list. Click on Close button to confirm. You can see that the pathology is now available in the list. Now it's important to select the protocol that you are going to use. There are a lot of protocols. For the gait analysis, we have, for example, Davis, LNAs, and so on. Now we are using the Davis protocol according to the standard marker placement. As we explained in the previous session, if you need to change the position of the marker from the 5th to the 2nd metatarsus because the patient has a supine foot, you have to select the corresponding protocol Davis 2nd metatarsus. We select the standard Davis protocol. And now we have to insert the anthropometric measures that we have just taken on the patient. In our case, the total body mass is 55 kilograms. The total height is 165 centimeters. The axis breadth is 23 centimeters. The right and the left pelvis depth are 6 centimeters. The right leg length is 85 centimeters. The left leg length is 83 centimeters. The right and the left knee diameters are 10 centimeters, and the right and the left malleolus width is 7 centimeters. Now click on Save. If you want, you can add some notes related to the patient in the available box. We suggest to fill in the information about the muscles set up for the EMG analysis. We have chosen to record the EMG activity of right tibialis anterior that is joined to the probe number 1, right gastrocnemius that is joined to the probe number 2, right peroneus longus, right rectus femoris, right vastus lateralis, and finally right semitendinosus. Finally, click on the button Create Session. In case the patient folder is already within the database, you have to select the patient folder and you can create the new session directly inside it. Now we can start to acquire. The patient is ready. The markers and the EMG probes have been already placed following all the discussed guidelines. To start the data capture, click on the button New Trial. You can see that the first trial type required by the Davis protocol is the standing. This trial is important for many reasons. First of all, for a technical reason, because it's used by the protocol to compute some values necessary for the dynamic trials. Pay attention to have your patient with the two heels well aligned. Ask the patient to not keep one foot in front of the other one. The standing trial is also important for a clinical reason, because the clinician can have important kinematic information of the patient during the orthostatic position. Click on the Acquire button. Before clicking on Monitor button, it's important to have the force plate completely unloaded, because as soon as you click on Monitor, the system records the force plate offset. Now, the patient can be asked to go on one of the force plates with both feet. In the central window, you have the field of view of the selected infrared camera, but you can switch the visualization to the video controller live monitor by clicking on the camera icon button on the right. Using the below black window, it's possible to visualize the real-time signals coming from the used platforms. For example, you can select the Z vertical component of the platform to check the patient weight during the standing. Click on the button Options, choose the desired measure unit. For example, we can switch from Newton to kilograms. Now, this value shows exactly the subject weight. Now, click on Capture and record the standing position for 3 or 5 seconds. Ask the patient to look at in front of him without moving. To stop the acquisition, click again on Capture. Instead of saving, closing, and going on with another new acquisition, we suggest to check immediately the quality of the standing acquisition. So, click on the button Go to 3D in order to open the 3D workspace. Thanks to the auto-labeling feature, all the markers have been already tracked properly. Also, the ground reaction force is being visualized. So click on play and verify that the tracking is good for the entire duration of the trial. Now click on Save, select all tracks if you want to save also the first plate data, and click on OK. If you want, you can edit some notes related to the trial, for example, OK. Before going on with the new acquisition, we suggest to exit from the acquisition panel and process the standing trial in order to assess the offset angles. Double-click on the standing file. As you remember, it has been already tracked, and so it will be loaded in the processing panel. Select the protocol Approach Davis standing and click on the Below button to run the processing. Now, save and close. The standing trial is ready to be reported. Select the report model Rep Davis standing. Select also the normative band and click on the button to open the report. In this way, you can check if the offset angles correspond to the patient's real standing posture, so you can be sure that the marker placement is correct. Now we are again in the new trial window and we are ready to start the walk-in test. But remember that the Davis protocol requires to remove the hemispherical markers from the heels. Before starting to record, really, we suggest to ask the patient to perform some walking trials in order to make him more comfortable with the test, so you can record the real walking pattern of the patient. Clicking on Acquire, we come back to the acquisition window. As usual, click on Monitor to switch on the infrared cameras. By the top menu view, you can enable or disable the other signals to visualize in the black live monitor window. The patient has to be ready out the walkway as far as possible so that he can perform some steps before arriving at the calibrated working volume. It should make him to reach a good walking velocity. Click on Capture to start the acquisition, and when the patient arrives at the end of the path, stop the acquisition. As before, we suggest again to click on Go to 3D to check immediately the quality of your 3D reconstruction of the walking trial. Click on Play, and if you want, at this step, you can also label the ground reaction forces according to which foot is in contact with the force plate. Click on the vector to open the menu with the ground reaction force labels. Click on Save and OK. Add some notes, for example, good both. Now let's go to acquire another walking trial. By now, you know very well how to do. At the finish of the acquisition, you can save and close without going through the Go to 3D option, because you have already checked previously that the first acquisition was good. It's enough to check only one time that there is no problem in the recorded data, and it's better to not spend time now in full compliance of the patient. We suggest to go on in order to have more or less 5 good walking trials for each side in your database. A trial can be considered good when the patient strikes a force plate with only one foot, so that the stance phase is completely performed inside it. But thanks to the BTS P6000 platform technology, you can also consider a trial as a good working trial when the patient performs a foot stance phase between two closed platforms. Only if the 2 feet are in contact on one platform at the same time, or if the foot stance phase is not completely performed inside the platform, the trial has to be discarded. We are ready now to start the processing phase. If you click on the session node, each trial will move into the corresponding field based on its own elaboration status. You know that after the acquisition, the trial needs to be tracked and then processed. You can see that the trial already tracked during the acquisition phase, for example, the walking number 1, is already in the field for the processing. All the other ones need still to be tracked. Let's go to track the other trials. Thanks to the auto-labeling, you have only to check that the tracking is good and edit the correct label for the two ground reaction forces. Repeat the same procedure for all trials. In this trial, you can see the foot is between two closed force plates. As discussed before, you have the option to merge the two forces to get only one good ground reaction force. Now you can see that all the trials are in the second panel, ready for the processing. During the working trials processing, you have only to define the gait cycle events, because the elaboration of all the gait parameters was already developed. We suggest to elaborate the working trials one by one, so click on the bin icon to empty the panel. Pay attention, you are not really deleting the trials, but you are only cleaning the panel. Now double-click on one working trial in the database to bring back it into the panel. Remember that for the elaboration of the working trial, the Davis protocol always requires the standing trial. Because you have already processed the standing, the file is in the last panel, ready for the report, but you can move up the file clicking on the blue arrow icon. Now, select the elaboration protocol in the menu. If you select the protocol Proch Davis, you are defining the gait cycle events manually. Click on the button to run the processing. In the title of the two-dimensional graph window, look at always the name of the event that you are going to define. The first event is the right heel strike. You have to define 2 foot strikes at least. To make easier the identification of the foot strikes, we suggest to visualize the trace of the malleolus marker in the three-dimensional window by clicking the right button of the mouse and look at the graphs below at the same time. The green line represents the knee flex extension angle. The red one is the dorsiplantar flexion of the ankle. When you have identified the correct time position, insert the event clicking with the mouse left button exactly on the time bar in the two-dimensional graph window below. Confirm clicking on OK. Now we have to define the right toe-off event. Also in this case, if you prefer, you can visualize the trace of the 5 metatarsus marker to better identify the toe-off event. We suggest also to visualize the right heel strikes events just defined, because you have to insert the toe-off event always between 2 heel strikes. Repeat exactly the same procedure for the left foot. Before the 2 left heel strikes and then the left toe off. At the end of the elaboration, click on Save. Another option in the processing protocol list is the Proch-Davis with the automatic definition of the gait cycle events by the force plates. If you have the new BTS P6000 sensorized walkway, the definition of all gait events will be automatic and fast. If you want, in the processing protocol list, you have also the possibility to select the protocol for the computation of the gait indexes. In this case, you have also to add a normative table according to the age of the patient. At the end of the processing, the trials are in the last panel ready for the report. First of all, we suggest to select the rep consistency model that allows you to compare all the trials in order to discard that ones are not similar and repeatable. In our case, in the page of the right and left kinematics, in the ankle dorsiplantar flexion graph, you can see that the pink line is different from the other ones. Also, in the page of the right and left kinetics, in the ankle moment graph, you have the confirmation that the trial is not good. In the legend, you can read the name of this trial. After identifying the trials that are not good, close this report without saving. And in the panel, let's go to disable the trials that you want to discard. In our case, the walking number 7. Now, reload the standing trial and all the good trials, selecting the report model rep-gait. You have also to add the normative band according to the age of the patient. Click on the button to open the final clinical report. For all the parameters, we are visualizing the mean value coming from all the walk-in trials loaded into the report, but we are sure that they are reliable because we have just checked them by the consistency report. In the first page, we find the spatial temporal parameters. Then we have the right and the left mean kinematics, the right and left kinetics, and finally the EMG activity of the assessed muscles.